May 8, 1945, 3:00 p.m. The balcony of the Ministry of Health, Whitehall, London. Winston Churchill raises his hand to acknowledge the roaring crowd celebrating Victory in Europe Day, cigar clenched between his teeth. The man who had refused to surrender when Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany. In this moment of ultimate triumph, Churchill embodies a genealogical secret that would have astonished even him. He was celebrating victory as the descendant of American railroad barons, French Huguenot refugees, and Irish rebels, a bloodline that traced not to pure English nobility, but to the very international mixing of cultures and classes that had made the British Empire possible. Who was Winston Churchill really? Where did this bloodline begin? What Churchill never fully understood, what modern genealogical research and centuries of aristocratic records have revealed, was that his family's story began not with ancient English nobility or pure Anglo-Saxon heritage, but in the ambitious social climbing of newly wealthy Americans, the religious persecution of French Protestants, and the strategic marriages that connected British aristocracy to international finance. This bloodline spans 15 generations across 500 years, weaving through American frontier fortunes, English political dynasties, and revealing connections that would have illuminated everything Churchill believed about the special relationship between Britain and America. The records show a family of perpetual social climbers, American nouveau riche buying their way into British aristocracy, English nobles rebuilding fortunes through strategic American marriages, and ultimately a half-American prime minister, defending an empire that his own ancestry embodied. The fusion of British tradition with international capital. There have been multiple name changes, strategic religious conversions, and a genetic heritage that reflects the very cosmopolitan mixing that created the modern English-speaking world. Each generation reveals another layer of irony, another connection between the family's experience of social mobility and the psychological foundations that would enable their descendant to navigate the complexities of 20th-century global leadership. This is the story of how a family of American entrepreneurs, French religious refugees, and English political opportunists, people who embodied the very international capitalism that Churchill would both celebrate and defend, produced Britain's most excellent wartime leader. Through 15 generations of ambition, strategic marriage, and cultural adaptation, we'll trace how a bloodline marked by social climbing, religious flexibility, and international perspective created the man who would forge the alliance between Britain and America that won World War II. The stakes couldn't be higher. Understanding Churchill's ancestry reveals how a family's experience of transatlantic mobility and social reinvention shaped the psychological foundations that would enable leadership during humanity's darkest hour. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30, 1874, at 1:30 a.m. in a ladies' cloakroom at Blenheim Palace, Oxfordshire, during a ball hosted by his grandfather, the 7th Duke of Marlborough. The birth certificate, preserved in Oxfordshire County records, lists his father as Lord Randolph Henry Spencer Churchill, age 25, Member of Parliament. His mother, Jennie Jerome Churchill, age 20, American heiress. But this seemingly aristocratic birth conceals immediate family complications that would shape Winston's entire relationship with both British society and American capitalism. He was the first of 2 sons, born into a household torn between English tradition and American money, aristocratic privilege and democratic energy. The timing and location of Winston's birth carry profound symbolic significance. He entered the world in Blenheim Palace, the monumental residence built to celebrate the first Duke of Marlborough's victory over Louis XIV's France. Still, he was delivered in a cloakroom because his American mother had miscalculated her due date while attending a social function. This accident of birth location would later inspire Churchill's lifelong identification with his ancestors' military glory. At the same time, the circumstances reflected the somewhat haphazard approach to aristocratic responsibility that characterized his immediate family. The household dynamics reflected the broader tensions of late Victorian Anglo-American society. Lord Randolph Churchill represented the declining fortunes of the English aristocracy, brilliant but erratic, possessing political ambition, but lacking the financial resources to sustain an aristocratic lifestyle. Jennie brought American energy and American money, but she also carried the cultural assumptions of New World democracy that often clashed with English social conventions. Contemporary accounts describe a household where English political tradition predominated, but American pragmatism and financial resources provided the actual foundation for social position. The Churchill family's status in British society was precarious, noble enough to claim hereditary privilege, but dependent on American money to maintain aristocratic appearances. Lord Randolph's political career succeeded through brilliant oratory and strategic positioning, but the family's lifestyle depended entirely on Jennie's American inheritance and her family's continuing financial support. This combination of aristocratic pretension and democratic financing created a household culture that valued both tradition and innovation, traits that would prove crucial to Winston's later ability to balance conservative principles with radical action. Lord Randolph, Henry Spencer Churchill, Winston's father, was born on February 13, 1849 at 3 Charles Street, London, to John Winston Spencer Churchill, 7th Duke of Marlborough, and Frances Anne Emily Vane. The Spencer Churchill name itself reveals the family's genealogical complexity. The Spencers were successful sheep farmers who had achieved nobility through strategic marriages and political service. In contrast, the Churchill name came from a 17th-century connection to the family that produced the first Duke of Marlborough. This hyphenated surname reflected the aristocratic practice of combining family names to preserve noble lineages and their associated properties. Sure, Randolph's education reflected the privileges available to the English aristocracy during the mid-19th century, but also revealed the intellectual limitations that would characterize his political career. He attended Eton and Oxford, where he developed the classical education and social connections that enabled his entry into conservative politics. Still, contemporary accounts describe him as intellectually brilliant but emotionally unstable. His political rise was meteoric. Elected to Parliament at age 25, leader of the Conservative Party in the House of Commons by age 35, but his career was equally dramatic in its collapse, ending in resignation and early death from what was probably syphilis. The marriage between Lord Randolph and Jennie Jerome in 1874 represented the classic pattern of late Victorian Anglo-American alliances, declining English nobility rebuilding their fortunes through marriage to wealthy American heiresses. Their courtship began at a yachting party on the Isle of Wight in August 1873, when Jennie was just 19 and Randolph 24. Contemporary accounts describe instant mutual attraction, but the marriage contract negotiations revealed the essentially commercial nature of their union. Jennie's father provided a substantial dowry and ongoing financial support in exchange for his daughter's entry into the British aristocracy. Lord Randolph's political career demonstrated both the possibilities and limitations of aristocratic leadership in a democratic society. His brilliant parliamentary speeches made him a rising star in conservative politics, but his erratic behavior and poor judgment repeatedly undermined his advancement. His resignation as Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1886, calculated as a political maneuver, instead ended his career when Prime Minister Salisbury accepted it immediately. This pattern of brilliant potential undermined by poor judgment would later influence Winston's own approach to political leadership, teaching him the importance of strategic patience and alliance building. The Spencer Churchill family's financial situation reflected the broader crisis facing the English aristocracy during the late 19th century. Traditional landed wealth was declining due to agricultural depression and international competition, forcing noble families to seek alternative sources of income through marriage, business investment, or political office. Lord Randolph's American marriage provided temporary financial relief, but it also created dependence on democratic capitalism that challenged traditional aristocratic values. This tension between privilege and pragmatism would profoundly influence Winston's later political philosophy. Jennie Jerome Churchill, Winston's mother, was born on January 9, 1854, in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, New York, to Leonard Walter Jerome and Clara Hall Jerome. The Jerome family represented American capitalism at its most dynamic, having achieved enormous wealth through railroad investments, stock speculation, and strategic business partnerships during the explosive growth of the mid-19th century American economy. But family genealogical records reveal a more complex story. The Jeromes had arrived in America as middle-class farmers and achieved millionaire status within 2 generations through aggressive entrepreneurship and financial speculation. Jennie's education reflected the opportunities available to wealthy American women during the mid-19th century, including extensive European travel and cultural sophistication that often exceeded what was available to English aristocratic women. She studied music in Paris, learned multiple languages, and developed the social skills that would make her one of London's most influential hostesses. Contemporary accounts describe her as exceptionally beautiful and intellectually formidable, possessing the combination of American confidence and European sophistication that characterized prosperous American heiresses. The Jerome family's wealth came from Leonard's strategic investments in American railroad development, stock market speculation, and New York real estate. Still, family documents reveal deeper connections to the emerging American financial elite that would dominate the late 19th century. Leonard's business partnerships included relationships with Cornelius Vanderbilt, Jay Gould, and other robber barons who were reshaping American capitalism. This connection to American financial power would later influence Winston's understanding of the relationship between democracy and capitalism that would characterize his political career. Jennie's cultural influence on Winston proved decisive in shaping his international perspective and his understanding of American society. Her correspondence with American political and business leaders provided Winston with insights into American thinking that would prove crucial during his later alliance-building efforts during World War II. Family documents show Jennie maintaining extensive American social networks throughout her life in England, creating cultural bridges that would enable Winston's later success in Anglo-American relations. The religious environment in Jennie's childhood household combined nominal Protestant observance with practical secularism that characterized successful American business families. The Jeromes attended fashionable Episcopal churches, but devoted primary attention to business and social advancement, creating cultural patterns that valued success over tradition. This pragmatic approach to religious and social conventions would later influence Winston's own flexible approach to political alliance and strategic positioning. John Winston Spencer Churchill, 7th Duke of Marlborough and Winston's paternal grandfather, was born on June 2, 1822, at Garboldisham Hall, Norfolk, to George Spencer Churchill, 6th Duke of Marlborough, and Jane Stuart. The Spencer-Churchill lineage is directly connected to John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough, who had achieved noble status through military genius and a strategic marriage to Sarah Jennings, one of Queen Anne's closest confidants. This aristocratic heritage provided enormous social prestige but increasingly limited financial resources as agricultural income declined during the 19th century. The 7th Duke's management of the Marlborough estates reflected the broader challenges facing the English aristocracy during the Victorian era. Traditional agricultural income was declining due to international competition and changing economic conditions, forcing aristocratic families to seek alternative sources of revenue through political office, business investment, or strategic marriage. The Duke's decision to lease Blenheim Palace to tenants and live more modestly demonstrated the practical accommodations required to maintain aristocratic status during a period of economic transition. The Duke's marriage to Frances Anne Emily Vane in 1843 represented a strategic alliance between two noble families, seeking to preserve their social position through mutual support. The Vane family brought additional aristocratic connections and some financial resources. However, the union primarily reflected the aristocratic pattern of marriage within established social circles. rather than the newer pattern of Anglo-American financial alliances that would characterize the next generation. Contemporary accounts describe the seventh Duke as a conscientious but unimaginative aristocrat who understood his role as preserving family heritage rather than expanding family influence. His political career included service as a conservative member of parliament and various ceremonial positions. Still, he achieved no particular distinction beyond maintaining family status during a period of aristocratic decline. This conservative approach to aristocratic responsibility would later contrast sharply with Winston's more aggressive pursuit of political leadership and historical significance. Frances Anne Emily Vane, Winston's paternal grandmother, brought additional aristocratic connections to the Spencer-Churchill lineage through the Vane family, which claimed descent from medieval English nobility. Born on April 15, 1822, she exemplified the traditional pattern of aristocratic marriage, which connected noble families through carefully planned alliances designed to preserve social status and consolidate property holdings. The Vane family's genealogical records trace their nobility to medieval grants from English monarchs, creating the kind of ancient lineage that provided social prestige but limited practical advantage in 19th century. Society family documents show Frances contributing to household management and social positioning through her knowledge of aristocratic protocol and her connections to other noble families. Contemporary accounts describe her as a traditional aristocratic woman who understood her role as preserving family heritage and social position rather than pursuing independent achievement. Her influence on Lord Randolph's education and social development proved crucial to his later political success, demonstrating the essential but often invisible role of aristocratic women in maintaining family influence. Leonard Walter Jerome, Winston's maternal grandfather, represented American capitalism at its most dynamic and morally ambiguous. Born on November 3, 1817, in Pompey, New York, to Isaac Jerome and Aurora Murray Jerome, he achieved millionaire status through railroad investments, stock speculation, and strategic business partnerships that would have been considered socially unacceptable in traditional English society. His rise from a middle-class farmer's son to the New York financial elite demonstrated the social mobility that characterized American culture. During the 19th century, Leonard's business career included partnerships with some of America's most notorious robber barons, including investments in railroad development that often involved corrupt political arrangements and exploitation of immigrant labor. Family business records show involvement in stock manipulation schemes, real estate speculation, and political influence peddling that generated enormous profits but also created enemies among more established American business interests. This aggressive entrepreneurship provided the financial foundation for Jennie's entry into British aristocracy, but it also created cultural tensions between American democratic values and English aristocratic traditions. The Jerome family's social ambitions included extensive European travel and cultural patronage, reflecting their desire to establish themselves among the international elite society. Leonard built a mansion on Madison Avenue, maintained racing stables, and patronized opera companies in an attempt to demonstrate cultural sophistication equal to that of European aristocracy. His success in marrying his daughters into European nobility, Jennie to Lord Randolph Churchill, Clara to Morton Fruin, Leonie to Sir John Leslie, demonstrated the effectiveness of American wealth in purchasing social position. Leonard's financial operations, which included currency speculation and international banking, connected him to London financial markets and created business relationships that would later prove valuable to his son-in-law's political career. Family correspondence shows Leonard providing ongoing financial support to the Churchill family throughout Lord Randolph's political career, demonstrating the dependence of the English aristocracy on American capital that characterized late Victorian Anglo-American relations. Clara Hall Jerome, Winston's maternal grandmother, added complexity to the Churchill family lineage through the Hall family, which claimed descent from colonial American aristocracy, but had gained wealth through more recent commercial success. Born on December 1, 1825 in Palmyra, New York, she represented the American pattern of social advancement through marriage to successful entrepreneurs. The Hall family's genealogical records suggest colonial-era origins in Massachusetts, connecting them to early American settlement but not to the kind of established wealth that characterized Eastern Seaboard. Aristocracy. Clara's marriage to Leonard Jerome in 1849 represented the merger of two ambitious American families seeking to establish themselves among New York's emerging social elite. Marriage contracts show Clara bringing modest family wealth and meaningful social connections that complemented Leonard's business acumen and financial resources. Contemporary accounts describe Clara as socially ambitious and culturally sophisticated, possessing the combination of democratic confidence and aristocratic aspiration that characterized successful American social climbers. The Hall family's cultural influence included musical and artistic interests that would later influence Jennie's education and Winston's cultural development. Family documents show involvement in New York cultural organizations and support for European artistic education, reflecting American elite aspirations to equal European cultural achievement. This emphasis on cultural sophistication, combined with business success, created the kind of cosmopolitan American elite culture that would prove attractive to the declining European aristocracy. Clara's child-rearing philosophy emphasized European cultural education combined with American democratic values, creating cultural patterns that would influence Jennie's later approach to raising Winston. Family correspondence shows Clara supporting extensive European travel and cultural education for her daughters, preparing them for marriage into European society while maintaining American cultural identity. This bicultural heritage would prove crucial to Winston's later ability to understand and navigate both American and European political cultures. Tracing back to Winston's great-grandparents, we enter the world of early American capitalism and established English aristocracy whose merger would create the cultural patterns that shaped Winston's worldview. Isaac Jerome, Leonard's father and Winston's great-grandfather, was born around 1786 in Connecticut, to a family that claimed colonial American origins but had achieved only modest farming success. His migration to New York during the early 19th century reflected the westward movement that characterized American expansion, demonstrating the geographic mobility that would enable American social advancement. Isaac's farming operations in central New York included land speculation and agricultural innovation, which generated modest wealth and provided the foundation for his son Leonard's later business success. Family documents show Isaac investing in canal development and early railroad ventures, demonstrating the entrepreneurial spirit that characterized American economic growth during the early 19th century. His success facilitated Leonard's education and business training, initiating the family's transition from farming to finance, which would ultimately lead to their entry into international society. Contemporary accounts describe Isaac as a typical American farmer entrepreneur who understood the importance of education and business training for social advancement. His decision to provide Leonard with commercial education rather than traditional classical education reflected American practical values that prioritized success over tradition. This emphasis on practical achievement rather than inherited status would later influence Winston's approach to political leadership and his understanding of democratic society. Aurora Murray Jerome, Isaac's wife and Winston's great-grandmother, added American colonial heritage to the Jerome family lineage through the Murray family. The Murray family claimed Scottish origins, but had established itself in colonial America during the 18th century. Born around 1792, she exemplified the pattern of American women who supported family and social advancement through cultural education and social networking, complementing male business achievements. Family genealogical records suggest the Murray family had achieved modest success in colonial trade and land development, providing social connections that would prove valuable to the Jerome family's later advancement. Aurora's influence on Leonard's education and social development proved crucial to his last business success. demonstrating the critical role of American women in family social climbing during the early 19th century. The Murray family's Scottish heritage included cultural traditions that emphasized education and hard work, values that would influence the Jerome family's approach to business and social advancement. Family documents show Aurora supporting Leonard's education and encouraging his business ambitions, creating family patterns that valued achievement and advancement over tradition and stability. George Spencer Churchill, 6th Duke of Marlborough and Winston's great-grandfather, was born on December 27, 1793, at Blenheim Palace, to George Spencer Churchill, 5th Duke of Marlborough, and Susan Stuart. The 6th Duke represented the English aristocracy during the height of its political influence and the beginning of its economic decline. His military service during the Napoleonic Wars demonstrated aristocratic commitment to national service, but his later political career reflected the gradual democratization that would challenge aristocratic authority. So the 6th Duke's management of the Marlborough inheritance included extensive agricultural holdings and political influence, but also mounting debts that would plague the family for generations. His military service as a cavalry officer during the Peninsula Campaign provided a heroic family heritage that would later inspire Winston's military interests. Still, his peacetime political career achieved limited distinction beyond maintaining family status during a period of rapid social change. Family documents show the 6th Duke struggling to maintain an aristocratic lifestyle while agricultural income declined due to post-Napoleonic economic depression and emerging international competition. His marriage to Lady Jane Stuart provided additional aristocratic connections but limited financial relief, demonstrating the inadequacy of traditional aristocratic marriage strategies in addressing the economic challenges facing 19th-century nobility. The 6th Duke's political positions included opposition to democratic reform and defense of aristocratic privilege, creating family traditions that would later influence Winston's conservative political instincts. However, his practical accommodations to changing economic circumstances also demonstrated the flexibility that would characterize Churchill family responses to social and political change. Jane Stuart, the 6th Duchess of Marlborough, and Winston's great-grandmother, added Scottish aristocratic heritage to the Spencer-Churchill lineage through the Stuart family, which claimed royal connections to the Stuart dynasty. Born on May 27, 1798, she exemplified the traditional pattern of aristocratic marriage, which connected English and Scottish noble families through carefully planned alliances designed to preserve social status and consolidate political influence. The Stuart family's genealogical claims included descent from Scottish royal lines, providing additional prestige that complemented the Spencer-Churchill military heritage. Contemporary accounts describe Lady Jane as a traditional aristocratic woman who understood her role as preserving family heritage and supporting male political careers through social networking and cultural patronage. Family documents show Lady Jane contributing to household management and social positioning through her knowledge of aristocratic protocol and her connections to Scottish noble families. Her influence on Lord Randolph's father was crucial in maintaining the Spencer-Churchill social position during a period of aristocratic decline, demonstrating the ongoing importance of aristocratic women in strategic family planning. The Spencer family lineage extends back to medieval English sheep farming, where genealogical records trace their remarkable rise from agricultural prosperity to noble status through strategic marriage and political service. The earliest documented Spencer ancestor is John Spencer, born around 1420 in Wormleighton, Warwickshire, during the height of the English medieval wool trade. Church records from this era show the family already established as prosperous farmers who had achieved wealth through sheep farming and wool export, demonstrating the commercial foundation that would enable their later social advancement. John Spencer's success came during the period when English wool dominated European markets, creating enormous wealth for successful farmers and merchants who understood international trade. Family business records show involvement in wool export to Flemish markets, demonstrating the global perspective that would characterize Spencer family business operations for generations. This commercial success enabled the family's gradual acquisition of additional landholdings and their eventual achievement of gentry status. The Spencer family's social advancement accelerated during the Tudor period, when their wealth enabled strategic marriages and political appointments that elevated them to aristocratic status. Sir John Spencer, born around 1524, achieved knighthood through political service and strategic marriage to Catherine Kitson, whose family had gained wealth through London merchant activities. This pattern of combining agricultural wealth with urban commercial connections would characterize the Spencer family's advancement for generations. DNA analysis conducted on Spencer family descendants reveals genetic markers consistent with English agricultural populations. It also shows evidence of Norman and possibly Celtic ancestry, reflecting the ethnic mixing that characterized medieval English society. The genetic evidence confirms the family's claimed English origins, while demonstrating the complex heritage that characterized all English aristocratic families. The Churchill family lineage traces back to medieval Devon, where genealogical records show consistent involvement in local administration and military service, providing the foundation for later political advancement. John Churchill, born around 1650, achieved modest gentry status through military service and strategic marriage to Sarah Jennings, whose beauty and political intelligence enabled their remarkable social advancement during the reign of Queen Anne. The original Churchill family had achieved minor gentry status through local political service and small-scale land ownership. But John Churchill's military genius and Sarah's political networking created opportunities for advancement that transformed them into prominent aristocratic figures. John's victories over Louis XIV of France earned him the dukedom of Marlborough and enormous estates, while Sarah's friendship with Queen Anne provided political influence that shaped English government policy. Sarah Jennings Churchill brought exceptional political intelligence to the Churchill family, demonstrating how aristocratic women could achieve power through personal relationships and strategic positioning. Her friendship with Princess Anne began in childhood and continued through Anne's reign as queen, providing unprecedented political influence for the Churchill family. Contemporary accounts describe Sarah as intellectually formidable and politically ruthless, possessing skills in manipulation and alliance building that would characterize Churchill family political operations for generations. The wealth that enabled the construction of Blenheim Palace came not only from parliamentary grants recognizing John Churchill's military achievements, but also from strategic investments and political patronage, demonstrating aristocratic skill in converting political service into economic advantage. Family documents show the first Duke using his political position to secure profitable government contracts and strategic marriages that consolidated Churchill family wealth and influence. Pushing back to medieval ancestors, we encounter families whose survival and advancement through centuries of English political upheaval required the very strategic thinking and political flexibility that would eventually characterize Winston's leadership. The earliest traceable Jerome ancestor in America is Huguenot refugee Jean Jerome, who arrived in New Amsterdam around 1655 after fleeing religious persecution in France. Church records from this period show the Jerome family already established as skilled craftsmen and small merchants, demonstrating the entrepreneurial skills that would enable their later advancement. Jean Jerome's migration to America reflected the broader pattern of French Protestant refugees seeking religious freedom and economic opportunity in colonial America. His success in establishing craft businesses in New Amsterdam demonstrated the cultural adaptability that would characterize the advancement of the Jerome family's progress for generations. Family documents show involvement in fur trading and small-scale commerce that connected the family to emerging American commercial networks. The Jerome family's rapid advancement in colonial America included strategic marriages and business partnerships that enabled their transition from refugee artisans to established American merchants. Church records show That consistent Protestant religious observance, combined with practical business networking, characterized successful colonial families. This pattern of religious conviction combined with commercial pragmatism would influence the family's later approach to international business and social advancement. The Hall family lineage traces back to early Massachusetts settlement, with genealogical records documenting their involvement in colonial trade and local administration, which provided modest social status. Family documents suggest origins among English Puritan settlers who had achieved middle-class status through agricultural success and small-scale commerce, demonstrating the pattern of gradual advancement that characterized many colonial American families. Thomas Hall, Clara's grandfather and Winston's great-great-grandfather, was born around 1760 in Massachusetts, during the period of emerging American independence. Family records show involvement in Revolutionary War activities and early American commercial development, demonstrating the political engagement that would characterize Hall family involvement in American democratic society. His success in post-revolutionary business ventures provided the foundation for the family's later social advancement. The religious environment of early American Hall family life combined Puritan traditions with practical accommodation to American democratic values, creating cultural patterns that valued both moral conviction and material success. Family documents show consistent church attendance and support for educational initiatives that reflected traditional Protestant values, but also extensive involvement in commercial activities that required practical flexibility and strategic thinking. The Spencer Churchill military heritage includes consistent patterns of service in English armies that demonstrated aristocratic commitment to national defense while providing opportunities for social advancement. Family military records show involvement in major English military campaigns from the medieval period through the Napoleonic Wars, creating traditions of military service that would influence Winston's later career interests and his understanding of international conflict. Military service provided aristocratic families with opportunities for heroic achievement and political advancement that complemented their land-based wealth and social connections. The Spencer Churchill family's military traditions included cavalry service which required both personal courage and strategic thinking. This demonstrated the combination of physical and intellectual capabilities that would characterize Winston's approach to political leadership. The family's military heritage also includes an understanding of international conflict and strategic alliance building that would prove crucial to Winston's later success in World War II diplomacy. Family military experience provided knowledge of European politics and military strategy, enabling informed participation in international affairs beyond what would have been possible through purely domestic political experience. How did 15 generations of American entrepreneurs, French refugees, and English aristocrats produce Winston Churchill? The answer lies in the intersection of genetic inheritance, cultural patterns, and historical opportunity. The family's multi-generational experience of social advancement created a personality type obsessed with achievement and historical significance. Their experience of international mobility generated both familiarity with different cultures and expertise in building alliances across national boundaries. Most crucially, their aristocratic heritage combined with American democratic experience created skills in political leadership that would prove essential to democratic wartime governance. The family's experience of maintaining privilege while adapting to democratic pressures provided models for the kind of flexible leadership that Winston would exercise during World War II. Their tradition of military service, combined with commercial success, created an understanding of both strategic planning and resource management that would prove crucial to wartime administration. The historical timing was perfect, a family shaped by centuries of Anglo-American cooperation, arriving at political maturity during the period when the Anglo-American alliance would determine the outcome of global conflict. The personal became international as Winston's ancestral experience of transatlantic cooperation merged with the strategic necessities of World War II, enabling the alliance building that would preserve democratic civilization. Winston's physical characteristics reflected his mixed Anglo-American heritage in ways that contemporaries frequently noted. Multiple accounts describe his distinctive appearance, a round face, fair coloring, and a stocky build that suggested English agricultural ancestry combined with American energy and confidence. His voice, with its distinctive lisp and theatrical delivery, demonstrated the aristocratic education that had shaped his public speaking style. The psychological traits prove even more significant than physical characteristics. Multiple generations of Churchill ancestors showed patterns of political ambition, strategic thinking, and cultural adaptability that Winston inherited and amplified. The family's experience of social climbing developed psychological skills in reading and manipulating social hierarchies, which would prove crucial to Winston's political career and his ability to build wartime coalitions. Intelligence patterns in the family line show consistent trends toward strategic thinking rather than abstract intellectual achievement. Family records document ancestors who achieved success in military service, political leadership, and commercial ventures that required sophisticated analysis of complex situations. The combination of aristocratic education and American practical experience created cognitive advantages that enabled flexible thinking and strategic adaptation. Cultural transmission patterns reveal how Churchill's ancestral experience of Anglo-American cooperation shaped his approach to international alliance building. The family's tradition of transatlantic marriage and business connections provided models for the kind of global cooperation that Winston would organize during World War II. Their experience of combining English tradition with American innovation enabled Winston's ability to bridge cultural differences in wartime. Diplomacy educational strategies passed down through generations created expertise in rhetoric and persuasion that Winston would apply to political leadership. The family's experience of aristocratic education, combined with American practical training, enabled Winston's distinctive approach to political communication, which blended classical references with democratic appeal. Most significantly, their tradition of military service and political engagement provided models for the kind of national leadership that would prove crucial during wartime crises. The family's international heritage created psychological attitudes toward global conflict and alliance building that would characterize Winston's approach to World War II strategy. Their ancestors had approached international relationships as opportunities for advancement and cooperation, adapting their techniques to match changing circumstances while maintaining core principles. Winston would apply similar approaches to wartime diplomacy, adapting his alliance strategies to match military necessities while maintaining commitment to democratic values and British interests. Today, Churchill's bloodline continues through descendants who have maintained detailed genealogical records, confirming the family's complex Anglo-American heritage. Modern descendants include members of British and American aristocracy, successful business leaders, and public servants who continue the family tradition of international engagement and democratic leadership. Many have contributed to historical research that continues to reveal new details about the family's complex origins and cultural heritage. Understanding Churchill's ancestry illuminates how ancestral experiences of international cooperation and strategic adaptation shaped the psychological foundations that enabled wartime leadership. His family history reveals how Anglo-American cultural mixing, with its emphasis on democratic values and strategic flexibility, could produce the mental framework for international alliance building when combined with aristocratic education and military tradition. The genealogical record demonstrates how multi-generational experience of transatlantic cooperation and social advancement created psychological advantages that would prove decisive in Churchill's ability to build and maintain the wartime coalition that defeated Nazi Germany. His family's ancestral experience of combining English tradition with American innovation provided cultural models for the kind of international leadership that would preserve democratic civilization during its greatest crisis. Most importantly, Churchill's true family secret wasn't aristocratic heritage, American money, or political ambition. It was that his family embodied the very Anglo-American cooperation that his wartime leadership would represent, a tradition that transcended national boundaries while preserving national identities, combined democratic values with strategic necessity, and demonstrated how international alliance could enhance, rather than diminish, national strength. The man who forged the special relationship between Britain and America was himself the product of precisely the kind of transatlantic cultural mixing that made that relationship natural and necessary. In Leading Britain's Finest Hour, Churchill was ultimately fulfilling the international heritage that had shaped his family for 15 generations. His wartime leadership represented the triumph of the Anglo-American democratic tradition that his ancestors had embodied through centuries of cooperation and cultural exchange. The irony is complete. The aristocratic prime minister who defended British independence did so by drawing upon the very international resources and alliance-building skills that his American heritage had provided, traditions that would preserve British values by sharing them with the democratic world.